Hello and welcome. Come, find a comfortable place to rest. Let the weight of the world slide off your shoulders. The day has been long, and the noise of the modern world is relentless. But here, in this space we have created, there is only the quiet hum of history. There is only the story. Close your eyes if you wish. Let your breathing slow. In and out, deep and slow. We are going to travel back. We are going to go back to a time when the sky itself seemed to shatter. We are traveling to the year of shadows. In the reckoning of the Dales, it was the year 1358. It was a time that would be etched into the memory of every living being on the face of Faerun. It was the beginning of the time of troubles. To understand the death of a god, we must first understand what it means for a god to live. In the realms, the deities are not abstract concepts. They are real. They are potent. They are the architects of reality. But in the years leading up to the crisis, they had become arrogant. They had forgotten their purpose. They believed that their power was a right, not a responsibility. They treated their faithful not as children to be guided, but as resources to be harvested. At the center of this rot were the dead three: Bane, the lord of strife; Bal, the lord of murder; and Myrkul, the lord of the dead. These three had once been mortals. Long ago, they had bargained and fought their way to divinity. Perhaps because of this mortal origin, they retained a very human kind of greed. They were not satisfied with ruling over tyranny, death, and murder. They wanted more. They looked at the structure of the cosmos, and they saw a hierarchy that they wished to dismantle. They turned their eyes toward the Overgod, Lord Io. Lord Io is a being beyond the comprehension of most mortals and even most gods. He is the hidden watcher. He is the one who established the rules of the crystal sphere. He does not answer prayers. He does not grant spells. He simply exists to ensure that the balance is maintained. To the dead three, however, he was just another obstacle. Bane and Myrkul, driven by a dark ambition that defied sanity, conspired to steal the tablets of fate. Imagine the tablets not merely as stone slabs. Imagine them as the physical manifestation of cosmic law. They were ancient. They were inscribed with the true names of every deity in the pantheon. They defined the portfolios of the gods. To hold the tablets was to hold the deed to the universe. Or so they believed. The heist itself is shrouded in mystery, lost to the chaos that followed. But we know they succeeded. For a brief, terrifying moment, the dead three held the laws of existence in their hands. They believed they had won. They believed they could rewrite the rules to make themselves supreme. But they had severely underestimated the Overgod. Lord Io did not react with fire and lightning. He did not send armies of angels. He reacted with a terrifying, bureaucratic finality. He summoned the gods, all of them, from the highest peaks of Mount Celestia to the deepest pits of the abyss. He called them to account. The gathering was unlike anything the multiverse had ever seen. The radiance of Lathander stood beside the shadows of Shar. The fury of Talos swirled alongside the calm of Eldeth. But the tablets were missing, and no one would confess. Lord Io asked for the return of the tablets. His voice was not loud, but it resonated in the core of every divine being. It was a command that vibrated in the soul. When the dead three refused to step forward, when the other gods pleaded ignorance or pointed fingers, the Overgod made a decision that would change history forever. He decided that the gods had failed. They were too detached. They were too arrogant. If they cared so little for the duties assigned to them, then they did not deserve the power that came with those duties. And so, the casting down began. It was not a gentle process. It was a violent ejection. Imagine a door slamming shut on the entire outer planes. The connection between the gods and their divine realms was severed instantly. Their infinite forms were compressed. Their omnipresence was shattered. They were forced into singular, finite vessels. They became avatars. On the world of Toril, the sky turned a sickly, chaotic color. Magic, which is the lifeblood of the realms, began to scream. The weave, controlled by the goddess Mystra, fluctuated wildly as she herself was cast down. For the mortals on the ground, it was a day of terror. Imagine standing in a field in the Dalelands. You look up and you see a streak of fire crossing the horizon. It looks like a meteor, but it moves with intention. It burns with a color that does not exist in nature. That is not a rock. That is a god falling from grace. Bane, the Black Lord, fell with a rage that could be felt across the continent. He did not accept his punishment. As he plummeted toward the earth, his mind was already racing. He was already planning. He landed near Gentle Keep, the city that was the heart of his worship. The impact was not just physical, it was spiritual. The people of Gentle Keep felt a wave of tyranny wash over them, a sudden heaviness in the air that made it hard to breathe. Myrkul, the Lord of Bones, fell with a cold, silent dread. He landed in the west. He was a creature of planning, of patience. He did not rage. He calculated. He knew that in this new form, he was vulnerable. He knew that death was now a possibility for him, just as it was for the mortals he had ruled over for so long. This is the crucial context for their eventual deaths. You must understand that when we talk about killing Bane and Myrkul, we are not talking about killing abstract ideas. We are talking about killing flesh and blood. When they landed, they were incredibly powerful. Yes, they were level 20 or higher in terms of mortal classification. They possessed stats that would make a dragon pause. They had hit points in the hundreds. They had an armor class that could deflect the blows of legendary weapons, but they were finite. If you cut them, they bled. If you burned them, they scarred. And if you hit them hard enough, they would die. This vulnerability drove them to madness. Bane, in particular, was incensed. He looked at his hands, his mortal hands, and he felt disgust. He was the Lord of Strife. He was the conqueror. To be reduced to walking the earth, to be forced to eat and sleep, was an insult he could not bear. But there was a catch. Lord Io had left a path to redemption. The tablets of fate were somewhere on Toril. If the gods could recover them and return them, perhaps they could regain their status. Bane, however, did not want to return the tablets to Io. He wanted to find them and use them to bargain. Or better yet, to force Io to acknowledge his supremacy. He had learned nothing from the fall. His arrogance was untouched. Myrkul shared this ambition, though his methods were different. He saw the chaos of the Avatar crisis not as a disaster, but as a harvest. With the gods walking the earth, wars would break out. Plagues would spread, and all of that meant death. All of that meant power for the Lord of Bones. The stage was set, the board was reset. The pieces were placed on the map of Faerun. In the north, near the icy waters of the Moonsea, Bane began to gather his armies. He began to twist the Zhentarim into a weapon specifically designed to hunt down the tablets. He needed eyes everywhere. He needed spies in every shadow. In the west, Myrkul moved toward Waterdeep. He sensed something there. He sensed the presence of ancient magic. He sensed the opportunity to hide in the vast necropolis of the City of the Dead. But they were not the only ones. Every god was now a player in this game. Helm, the Vigilant One, was the only deity allowed to keep his divinity, guarding the staircase to the heavens to ensure no one sneaked back in. Torm, the god of duty, was in Tantras. Mystra was searching for a new champion. The world was a powder keg, and Bane was holding a torch. You can imagine the fear of the common people. The priests could no longer grant spells. The temples went silent. Prayers went unanswered. If a farmer fell ill, the local cleric could do nothing but offer bandages and herbs. The miraculous healing that the realms relied on was gone. This created a vacuum of hope, and into that vacuum stepped the tyrants. Bane knew that people were afraid. He knew that frightened people look for a strong leader. He presented himself not just as a god, but as a savior. He promised order. He promised protection. All he asked for in return was absolute, unquestioning obedience. Myrkul promised nothing. He simply promised that the end was coming. He fed on the despair. He lurked in the nightmares of the people of the Sword Coast. As we prepare to follow their journey to the grave, remember this moment. Remember the silence of the heavens. Remember the feeling of abandonment. This is what drove the mortals to fight back. This is what created the heroes who would eventually stand toe to toe with the divine. The death of Bane and Myrkul was not an accident. It was the inevitable result of their own nature. They were killed by their own hubris, manifested in the steel and magic of the heroes who rose to stop them. In the next section, we will dive deep into the chaos of the world immediately following the landing. We will look at the specific magical anomalies that plagued the land, and we will see how the common folk dealt with the realization that their gods were walking among them. The dust has not yet settled. The echoes of the impact are still rolling across the hills and valleys of Faerun. In the previous section, we witnessed the cause. We saw the arrogance of the dead three and the judgment of Lord Io. Now, we must live in the consequence. You are standing in the immediate aftermath. The sky has changed. It is no longer the comfortable blue canopy that shielded the world. It is a swirling, bruised mixture of violet and angry orange. The constellations you know, the stars that sailors used to navigate, are gone or shifted. It is as if the universe itself has turned its back on Toril. This period is often remembered for the battles, for the titans fighting in the streets. But before the violence, there was the malfunction. The world simply stopped working the way it was supposed to. Let us talk about the magic first. In the Forgotten Realms, magic is not just a tool. It is the physics of the world. It is the weave. Imagine a vast, invisible tapestry that covers everything. Every thread is a ley line. Every knot is a nexus of power. When a wizard casts a spell, they are plucking these strings. They are vibrating the weave to produce fire, or ice, or light. When Mistra, the goddess of magic, was cast down, the weave did not vanish. It shattered. It became tangled. It became raw. Imagine you are a wizard in the city of Suzil. You have spent 50 years studying your craft. You know the incantations. You know the exact hand gestures. You prepare to cast a simple spell, perhaps a light spell to illuminate your study. You speak the word. You trace the rune in the air, but instead of a gentle glow, a sphere of lightning erupts from your fingertips. It scorches your books. It blows out the windows. Or perhaps nothing happens at all. The energy fizzles and dies, leaving you with a headache and a sense of profound wrongness. This was the reality of wild magic. During the time of troubles, casting a spell was like playing a game of chance with a loaded die. Every time a sorcerer drew upon the weave, they risked a surge. A fireball might turn into a swarm of butterflies. A teleportation spell might send you 5 feet to the left or merge you into a stone wall. A summoning spell might call forth a demon you cannot control, or a sheep that speaks in the voice of your mother. The scholars of Candlekeep recorded thousands of these anomalies. They wrote of zones where gravity reversed. They wrote of pockets of silence where no sound could exist. They wrote of forests where the trees began to weep blood because a druid tried to heal a broken branch. For the common folk, this was terrifying. Magic was the foundation of their security. The city guards relied on magical alarms. The nobles relied on magical protections. The merchants relied on magical preservation for their goods. In an instant, the infrastructure of civilization began to crumble. But if the failure of arcane magic was a crisis, the silence of the divine was a catastrophe. This is the most crucial element to understand about the Year of Shadows. The clerics, the paladins, the priests, they were the backbone of society. They were the doctors. They were the counselors. They were the moral compass. On the morning after the fall, millions of priests woke up, knelt before their altars, and began their morning prayers. They reached out with their minds, seeking the familiar warmth of their deity. They sought the comforting presence of Torm or Ilmater or Chauntea, and they found nothing. It was not a quiet silence. It was a heavy, oppressive void. It was the feeling of walking into a house you expect to be full of family, only to find it abandoned and cold. Imagine the panic in a temple of Ilmater, the crying god. The sick and the dying are lined up on cots. They are waiting for the daily healing. The high priest steps forward. He places his hands on a wounded soldier. He recites the prayer that has worked 1,000 times before. He waits for the silver light to knit the flesh back together, but the light does not come. The soldier continues to bleed. The priest chants louder, panic rising in his voice. He begs, he screams, but the wound remains. The soldier dies. Multiply this by every temple in every city across the continent. The realization hit like a physical blow. The gods were not listening. Mechanically, in the game terms of Dungeons and Dragons, this was represented by a complete failure of divine magic. First and second circle spells might still work, drawn from the cleric's own faith and willpower. But anything powerful, anything that required the direct intervention of a deity, it was gone, unless you were close. This was the cruel irony of the Avatar crisis. The gods were on Toril. They were walking the earth. If a cleric was within 1 mile of their god's avatar, their powers would return. They would be supercharged. But Faerun is a massive continent. If you were a priest of Bane in the Moonsea, and Bane was in Gentle Keep, you were powerful. But if you were a priest of Bane in Calimshan, thousands of miles away, you were powerless. This geographical lottery created chaos. Pilgrimages began immediately. Desperate mobs of faithful flooded the roads, seeking rumors of where their gods had landed. They abandoned their homes. They abandoned their duties. They marched toward rumors and whispers, hoping to be near the divine presence once again. And the gods themselves, they were causing devastation simply by existing. When a god lands on the material plane, they do not land softly. We spoke of Bane crashing near Gentle Keep, but he was not alone. Umberlee, the bitch queen, crashed into the sea of fallen stars. Her impact generated tidal waves that swallowed coastal villages whole. The pirate fleets were tossed like toys in a bathtub. The ocean boiled for weeks. Maelor, the Beast Lord, landed in the Gulthmere forest. His presence drove the animals insane. Wolves and bears grew to monstrous sizes and began to hunt men for sport. The balance of nature in the region was twisted into a predator's paradise. Gond, the Wonderbringer, fell into the island nation of Lanton. His arrival caused the very machines and inventions of the gnomes to animate. Clockwork horrors marched through the streets. Inventions exploded or began to construct themselves into bizarre, impossible structures. The world was being rewritten by the mere presence of these beings. The laws of physics were bowing to the laws of divinity. And amidst this chaos, the social order collapsed. Without the threat of divine punishment, without the promise of magical enforcement, the darker nature of humanity surfaced. Riots broke out in Waterdeep, in Baldur's Gate, in Suzil. Doomsday cults sprang up overnight. Charismatic leaders stood on street corners, claiming that the end of the world had arrived. They claimed that the gods had abandoned them because of their sins. They demanded sacrifices to appease the angry heavens. False avatars appeared. Opportunistic wizards and powerful monsters realized that no one knew what the gods looked like in mortal form. They used illusions to pose as deities. They demanded gold. They demanded worship. They led the desperate astray. It was a time of paranoia. You could not trust your neighbor. You could not trust your priest. You could not even trust your own eyes. Now, focus your attention back to the north. Focus on the Moonsea. While the rest of the world was panicking, Bane was acting. The Black Lord did not waste time mourning his lost divinity. He did not waste time feeling sorry for himself. He saw the silence of the heavens as an opportunity to consolidate his control on the earth. The silence affected his church as well. The lower priests of Bane were terrified. They had ruled through fear, backed by the power of their god. Now they were just men in black robes. They were vulnerable to the anger of the populace they had oppressed. But Bane turned this weakness into a weapon. He was in gentle keep. His presence radiated through the city, while priests of other gods were powerless. The high priests of Bane in gentle keep were stronger than ever. They were close to the source. Bane used this contrast to prove his supremacy. He paraded his power. He performed miracles in the streets, while the priests of Tyr and Torm stood helpless. He told the people of the Moonsea that he was the only god who had stayed. He told them that the others had fled, but he, Bane, had remained to protect them. It was a lie, of course, but it was a seductive lie. He began to organize the Zhentarim. The Black Network was already a formidable organization of spies and merchants, but under the direct supervision of the Avatar, it became a military machine. Bane knew he needed the Tablets of Fate. He knew they were the key. He summoned F-Saul Kembril. You may know the name. F-Saul was the leader of the Zhentarim, a high priest of immense ambition. In any other time, F-Saul might have tried to usurp power. But standing before the physical manifestation of the Lord of Tyranny, F-Saul bowed low. He became the right hand of the Avatar. Bane issued orders that were impossible for a mortal mind to fully comprehend. He demanded the capture of anyone who showed magical aptitude. He demanded the execution of rival clergy. He demanded that the Zhentarim expand their search grid to every corner of the Heartlands. But Bane had a secret fear. Even in his arrogance, he knew he was vulnerable. He could feel the hunger in his mortal belly. He could feel the fatigue in his mortal limbs. He knew that if the other gods organized against him, he could fall. He needed an ally. And so, he looked to the shadows. He looked to the one being who understood the stakes as well as he did. He looked for Myrkul. Myrkul was not building armies. Myrkul was not giving speeches in the town square. The Lord of Bones had gone quiet. He understood that in this new world, information was more valuable than soldiers. Myrkul had landed near the Boresker Bridge, but he moved quickly to the city of Waterdeep. He disguised himself. He did not walk as a giant skeleton. He walked as a robed figure, a whisper in the alleyways. He sought out the darkest places of the city. He sought out the old tombs. While Bane was the hammer, Myrkul was the scalpel. The silence of the heavens worked in Myrkul's favor. Death is silent. The cessation of divine magic meant that resurrection spells no longer worked. Raise dead no longer worked. When someone died in the Year of Shadows, they stayed dead. This created a surplus of souls. The fugue plane, the place where souls go to be judged, was closed. The spirits of the dead were trapped on the material plane. They lingered. Ghosts became a plague. Poltergeists infested homes. The boundary between the living and the dead grew thin. Myrkul feasted on this. He gathered these lost souls. He whispered to them. He promised them a purpose. He began to build a legion not of flesh, but of spirit. You must understand the scale of this tragedy. For thousands of years, the people of Faerun lived with the certainty of the afterlife. They knew that if they lived well, they would join their gods. Now, that certainty was gone. They saw the ghosts of their loved ones wandering the streets, confused and wailing. They saw the dead rising from their graves, not because of a necromancer, but because there was nowhere else for them to go. The horror of the Avatar crisis was not just the monsters. It was the existential dread. It was the realization that the cosmic order was broken. As we move toward the inevitable conflict, keep this image in your mind. A world where the sky is the wrong color. A world where magic is a loaded gun. A world where the dead walk because the door to the afterlife is locked. And in the center of this nightmare, two former gods are plotting. They do not care about the suffering. They do not care about the broken weave. They care only about the tablets. Bane knows that the tablets are the only way to force Ao to restore his power. Myrkul knows that the tablets are the key to rewriting the rules of death itself. They will meet, they will align, and they will decide that the city of Tantras is the place where their destiny lies. But before they can reach Tantras, they must deal with the obstacles in their path. They must deal with the mortal heroes who have been swept up in this divine game. In the next section, we will follow the Black Lord closely. We will walk the battlements of Gentle Keep. We will see the face of tyranny without a mask. And we will learn how Bane discovered the location of the first tablet and the terrible price he was willing to pay to retrieve it. The silence is about to be broken, and it will be broken by the sound of marching boots and the screams of the dying. The silence of the heavens was deafening to the priests of the world, but in one specific corner of Faerun, the silence was replaced by the sound of iron boots on stone. It was replaced by the sound of absolute, terrified obedience. We travel now to the Moonsea. Imagine a body of water that is dark and cold. It is not a friendly ocean. It is a hard, unforgiving lake surrounded by lands that breed hard, unforgiving people. On the western shores of this water lies the city of Gentle Keep. It is a fortress city. Its walls are made of black basalt. Its towers loom like accusatory fingers pointing at the sky. For generations, this city has been the seat of the Black Network. The Gentarim, a criminal and political organization dedicated to the accumulation of power through fear, trade, and magic. They worshipped Bane here. They built grand temples in his name. They sacrificed enemies on his altars, but they did so with the comfortable distance of mortals worshipping a distant god. They thought they understood tyranny. They thought they understood what their god wanted. They were wrong. When Bane crashed into the courtyards of Gentle Keep, the reality of their faith came home to roost. He did not arrive as a cloud of smoke. He did not arrive as a spirit. He arrived as a man. A massive, imposing man. He stood well over 7 feet tall. He was encased in armor that seemed to absorb the light around it. It was black, segmented plate, adorned with the iconography of the Black Hand. His face was hidden behind a visor, but his eyes burned with a red, malevolent intelligence. This was the avatar of Bane. In the game mechanics of Dungeons and Dragons, an avatar is a formidable thing. We are talking about a being with an armor class that defies mortal weaponry. We are talking about a creature with resistance to magic that would shatter a normal wizard. Bane was a fighter of the highest caliber, combined with the spellcasting ability of a high priest. But he was also flesh. This is the detail that we must focus on to understand his ambition. Bane was hungry. For the first time in millennia, the Lord of Strife felt the gnawing emptiness of a stomach that needed food. He felt the ache in his muscles after he swung his mace. He felt the heaviness of his eyelids when the sun went down. He hated it. He sat upon the black throne in the high hall of the keep. He demanded food. Servants brought him roasted meats and fine wines. He ate with a savage intensity. He consumed the resources of the city like a fire consumes dry wood. And as he ate, his rage grew. Every bite was a reminder of his fall. Every hour of sleep he required was an hour he was not conquering. This physical vulnerability made him more dangerous, not less. A god who is secure in his heaven can afford to be patient. A god who is mortal and angry is a ticking clock. He turned his gaze upon the leadership of the Gentarim. There were 2 men who held the reins of power in the keep. One was F-Saul Kembril. F-Saul was the high priest of Bane. He was a man of immense ambition, a political maneuvering genius who had spent his life climbing the ladder of the church. He had always claimed to speak for Bane. Now Bane was sitting in his chair. F-Saul was terrified. He knew the secrets of the church. He knew the corruptions. He knew the times he had used Bane's name to further his own personal goals. He expected to be struck down. He expected to be flayed alive for his arrogance. But Bane did not kill him. Bane saw in F-Saul a useful tool. F-Saul was efficient. F-Saul was ruthless. Bane looked at the high priest and saw a mirror of his own desire for order. He stripped F-Saul of his autonomy, but he increased his power. F-Saul became the voice of the Avatar. When Bane whispered, F-Saul shouted. The second man was Manchun. Manchun was the leader of the Zhentarim. He was an archmage of incredible power. He was the founder of the Black Network. He was accustomed to being the smartest and most powerful person in the room. He was a wizard who had cloned himself multiple times to cheat death. When Bane arrived, Manchun felt his magic wither. The weave was broken. His spells were unreliable, and standing before him was a being who could snap his neck with one hand. Manchun bowed. He had no choice. Bane looked at the wizard with contempt. He saw magic as a tool that had failed him. But he knew he needed the Zhentarim spy network. He needed Manchun's eyes. Bane issued a decree that would shake the foundations of the organization. He initiated a purge. History calls it the Bane Death. Bane declared that there were too many voices in the keep. There were too many minor priests, too many ambitious lieutenants who were draining resources. He wanted purity. He wanted singular focus. He ordered the execution of the weak. He ordered the execution of those who had shown hesitation. It was a night of long knives. In the winding corridors of the keep, assassins moved silently. Priests of Bane slit the throats of their juniors. Captains of the guard murdered their own lieutenants. The gutters of Gentle Keep ran red. It was a horrific display of tyranny. But it achieved Bane's goal. It solidified the city into a single, terrifying weapon. There was no more politics in Gentle Keep. There was only the will of Bane. With his base of operations secured, Bane turned his attention to the prize. The tablets of fate. He knew they were out there. He could feel them calling to him, a subtle pull on his divine essence. He knew that the tablets were the only currency Lord Io would accept. But Bane had a twisted interpretation of this quest. He did not want to find the tablets to apologize. He did not want to walk up to the celestial stairway, hand them over, and say he was sorry. No. Bane wanted to leverage them. He believed that if he held the tablets, and if he could unlock their power while in his avatar form, he could bypass Ao's judgment. He could rewrite the rules of the cosmos to make his divinity permanent and absolute. He wanted to enslave the other gods. He wanted to make Toril his personal throne world. But he had a problem. He did not know where they were. The tablets had been scattered. They were shielded from magical scrying. He could not simply cast a spell to find them. He needed information. He dispatched the Zhentarim. Thousands of spies, merchants, and soldiers were sent out from the Moonsea. They flooded the Dales. They infiltrated the cities of the Sword Coast. Their orders were simple. Look for anything unusual. Look for ancient stone artifacts. Look for people who seem to be carrying a burden they cannot explain. And look for the woman named Midnight. Bane had learned, through his divine intuition and the reports of his spies, that the goddess Mystra had also fallen. He knew that her power was seeking a vessel. He suspected that the tablets were gravitationally linked to these new, rising powers. While he plotted, he received a visitor. It was not a visitor who knocked on the front gate. It was a visitor who stepped out of the shadows in the corner of Bane's war room. The torches flickered and dimmed. The air grew suddenly cold, carrying the scent of dry dust and old graves. It was Myrkul, the Lord of Bones, had come from the west. He had traveled through the Underdark and through the magical pathways that only the dead know. He appeared before Bane not as a warrior, but as a grim reaper. His avatar was a gaunt, skeletal figure in rotting robes. The meeting between Bane and Myrkul is one of the most pivotal moments in this history. These two entities had been allies for centuries, but they were also rivals. They despised each other almost as much as they despised the forces of good, but they needed each other. Bane looked at Myrkul and saw a schemer. He saw an intelligence that could decipher the riddles of the tablets. Myrkul looked at Bane and saw a battering ram. He saw a force that could crush the armies of the goodly gods. They spoke in the language of the old gods, a language that sounded like grinding stones. They forged a pact. They would work together to retrieve the tablets. They would share the power. They would destroy Baal if he got in their way. Myrkul had brought intelligence. He had been tracking a group of adventurers, a mortal named Kelimver, a warrior named Adon, a thief named Sirik, and the wizard Midnight. Myrkul revealed that these mortals were in possession of one of the tablets, or at least they were on the path to finding it. They were currently moving through the Heartlands, heading towards Shadowdale. Shadowdale, the home of Elminster. The name caused Bane to clench his armored fist. Elminster was a thorn in his side that had festered for centuries. The old mage was the chosen of Mystra. If the tablets were going to Shadowdale, it meant the forces of good were rallying. Bane stood up from the black throne. The movement was sudden and violent. The sheer physical weight of his avatar cracked the stone floor beneath him. He made his decision. He would not wait for the spies to bring him the tablets. He would not wait in gentle keep while mortals played games with his divinity. He would go to them. He ordered the mobilization of the Zhentarim army, not a raiding party, an army. He called for the legions of orcs and ogres that lived in the Moonsea North. He called for the heavy infantry of the keep. He called for the spellcasters who were still brave enough to use their unpredictable magic. He was going to march on Shadowdale. He was going to burn the home of the great sage to the ground. He was going to take the tablets from the cooling corpses of the heroes. This was the height of his ambition. He was not hiding. He was not skulking. He was declaring war on the world. But there is a nuance here that we must explore. A psychological detail that adds depth to the monster. Bane was afraid. Deep down, beneath the layers of black steel and divine arrogance, the mortal fear was growing. He had felt a twinge of mortality when he cut his hand on his own throne. He had seen the way the common soldiers looked at him with fear, yes, but also with a new kind of assessment. They were wondering if he could bleed. He knew that if he stayed in Gentle Keep, eventually the other gods would come for him. Torm was gaining strength. Helm was guarding the celestial gates. If Bane did not act now, his window of opportunity would close. He was driving his army not just with the whip of tyranny, but with the desperate pace of a fugitive. He commanded F-Zowl to prepare his personal warhorse. A nightmare beast, black as the void, with hooves that struck sparks of hellfire. He commanded Manshun to prepare the magical defenses for the march. The citizens of Gentle Keep watched in silence as the gates opened. They watched as the Black Lord rode out. It was a procession of darkness. The banners of the Black Hand snapped in the wind. The drums beat a slow, rhythmic pulse that sounded like a dying heart. Bane did not look back. He had stripped the city of its best defenders. He had drained its treasury to fund the march. He did not care if Gentle Keep fell to invaders in his absence. He did not care if the people starved. The city was just a tool, and he was done with it. He rode south toward the river Tesh, toward the Dales, toward his destiny, and riding beside him, invisible to the mortal eye, was the presence of Myrkul. The Lord of Bones did not ride a horse. He drifted. He moved like a cloud of pestilence. He whispered counsel into Bane's ear. "Let them run," Myrkul would whisper. "Let them think they can escape. Death is faster than any horse." Myrkul's plan was more subtle. He knew that Bane's aggression would draw out the heroes. It would force them to reveal the location of the tablets. Bane was the distraction. Bane was the loud noise that would make the enemy look the wrong way. While everyone was watching the Black Lord smash his way through the Dales, Myrkul would be waiting to snatch the prize. The ambition of the Dead Three was a poison that was seeping into the land itself. Wherever Bane's army marched, the grass died. The water turned brackish. The birds stopped singing. They were bringing the time of troubles to the doorstep of the innocent. As we conclude this section, imagine the sight of that army on the horizon. Imagine you are a farmer in the Dalelands. You see the dust cloud rising. You hear the distant thunder of drums. You know that the stories are true. The gods are here, and they are angry. Bane is coming, and he is bringing hell with him. But he is walking into a trap of his own making. He believes he is the hunter. He believes he is the apex predator. He does not realize that by leaving his fortress, by exposing himself to the open field, he is making himself a target. He is marching toward Tantras. He just doesn't know it yet. The road to Tantras is paved with his own hubris. In the next section, we will follow this march. We will see the devastation of the Dales. We will see how the heroes, Midnight, Kelemver, and their companions maneuvered against this overwhelming force. And we will see how the stage was set for the first great confrontation. The Black Lord has left his throne. The game has truly begun. The silence of the heavens has been replaced by the thunder of the earth. In the previous section, we watched as the Black Lord, Bane, rode out from the gates of Gentle Keep. We saw the ambition in his eyes and the fear in the hearts of his followers. Now, we must walk beside this army. We must follow the trail of ash and broken stone that marked the path of the Avatar. You are standing on the banks of the river Tesh. It is usually a peaceful waterway, a trade route that connects the Moonsea to the wider world. But today, the water is trembling. Ripples are forming not from the wind, but from the rhythmic pounding of thousands of boots. The army of darkness was a sight that defied logic. It was a chaotic mix of disciplined, gentler soldiers in their black armor, wild bands of orcs from the Thar region, and ogre mercenaries who carried tree trunks as clubs. But what made this army truly terrifying was not its size, it was its silence. Usually, an army on the march is a loud thing. Soldiers sing, they curse, they complain about the food. But in the shadow of Bane, no one spoke. The soldiers were too afraid to make a sound. The only noise was the clanking of metal, the creaking of leather, and the heavy, wet breathing of the monsters. At the head of this column rode Bane. He did not ride in a carriage. He sat atop his nightmare steed, a creature of smoke and fire that left scorched hoofprints on the cobblestones. Bane was a figure of absolute focus. He did not look at the villages he passed. He did not look at the peasants fleeing into the woods. His eyes were fixed on the horizon to the south. He was heading for Shadowdale. You must understand why Shadowdale matters. It is a small farming community. It looks like nothing special on a map. But it is the home of Elminster, the old mage, the sage of Shadowdale. For centuries, Elminster had been the check on Bane's power. He was the chosen of Mystra. He was the one mortal Bane truly hated. Bane believed that the heroes of the Lance, Midnight, Kelimver, Adon, and Cyric were hiding there. He believed they had the tablet of fate. The march was brutal. Bane drove his soldiers to the point of collapse. He did not care about fatigue. He did not care about logistics. He was a god of tyranny, and he tyrannized his own supply lines. If a horse died, it was eaten. If a soldier fell, they were left behind. As they approached the river Ashaba, the resistance began. The Dalesmen are a proud people. They are farmers and rangers. They knew they could not stand against an avatar in open combat, so they fought a war of harassment. Archers hidden in the tree line would loose a volley of arrows and then vanish. Druids would turn the mud into quicksand to slow the wagons. Bane barely noticed. When arrows bounced off his black plate armor, he did not flinch. He simply raised a gauntleted hand. A blast of dark energy, darker than the night, would erupt from his palm. Trees would shatter. The hidden archers would scream as their life force was drained away. This was the first time the world truly saw the combat capabilities of a fallen god. Bane was level equivalent to a high-ranking adventurer, but his stats were augmented by his divine essence. His hit points were massive. His saving throws were nearly perfect. Magic resistance rolled off him like water off a duck. He was a juggernaut. When the army finally reached the twisted tower of Ashaba, the symbol of Shadowdale, Elminster, was waiting. The confrontation between Bane and Elminster is legendary. It was not a duel of swords. It was a duel of wills. Elminster stood on the bridge, a lone figure in ragged robes, leaning on his staff. Behind him lay the village he loved. Before him lay a god of hate. Bane demanded the tablet. Elminster, with his trademark dry wit, told the god to go home. Bane attacked. The battle that followed leveled the surrounding forest. Spells of immense power were thrown around like stones. Fireballs, lightning bolts, disintegrations. The weave, already damaged and fragile, screamed under the pressure. Wild magic surges erupted constantly. A spell intended to freeze might suddenly explode in a shower of pink sparks. A shield spell might turn into a flock of doves. But Bane was winning. He was relentless. He pressed the old mage back. In a final, desperate gambit, Elminster realized he could not win through conventional means. He cast a forbidden spell. A spell that was designed to break the local weave completely. There was a flash of white light that was seen as far away as Cormer. When the light faded, the bridge was gone. The trees were gone. Elminster was gone, and Bane was on his knees. Smoke rose from his armor. His skin was blistered. He was panting, heaving great breaths of air. For a moment, the gentler soldiers held their breath. Was the god dead? Had the wizard killed him? Then Bane stood up. He was wounded. His hit points had been reduced. He was furious, but he was alive. He let out a roar of frustration that shattered the windows in the nearby village. He had survived, but at a cost. He was weakened. And worse, he realized the truth. The heroes were not there. While Bane had been distracted fighting Elminster, the group carrying the Tablet of Fate had slipped away. They had moved south. They were heading for the coast. They were heading for the city of Tantras. Bane's rage was cold and calculating. He did not burn Shadowdale to the ground as he had planned. He did not have the time. He turned his army east. He pivoted the entire column like a snake changing direction. To Tantras, he commanded. The march to Tantras was even harder than the march to Shadowdale. The army was battered. They had seen things that broke their minds. But they marched. They marched because the alternative was facing Bane's displeasure. Tantras is a different beast than Shadowdale. It is a major port city on the Dragon Reach. It is a city of high stone walls, bustling trade, and deep faith. It is known as the city of Torm. Torm, the god of duty, the loyal fury. Torm had also fallen during the crisis. He was in Tantras. But unlike Bane, Torm did not come as a conqueror. He came as a guardian. He lived in the temple. He walked the streets, helping the common folk, lifting heavy loads, settling disputes. The people of Tantras loved him. They worshipped him not out of fear, but out of genuine devotion. When word reached Tantras that the Black Army was approaching, the city went into lockdown. The gates were sealed. The harbor was blockaded with chains. The city guard was mobilized. But the true defense of Tantras was the spirit of its people. They had their god with them. They believed they were invincible. Bane knew this. He knew that Torm was there. and he relished the idea. He saw Torm as a weakling, a god who served others rather than forcing others to serve him. Bane believed that he could crush Torm and take the tablet of fate in one stroke. He would prove once and for all that tyranny was stronger than duty. As the gentler army arrived at the outskirts of Tantras, they began to dig in. They built siege lines. They constructed trebuchets and catapults. They surrounded the landward side of the city in a crescent of steel. But Bane did not attack immediately. He was cunning. He knew that Torm was protecting the city. If Bane attacked the walls, Torm would defend them. Bane wanted to weaken the city first. He wanted to break their spirit. He sent his navy, the gentler fleet, to blockade the harbor. He cut off the food supply. He cut off the trade. He turned Tantras into an island of fear. Inside the city, the atmosphere was tense. The heroes Midnight, Kelimver, Adon, and Sirik had arrived. They had the first tablet of fate, but they were trapped. They could not leave by sea, and they could not leave by land. Midnight, the wizard, was struggling with the magic of the tablet. She could feel the power radiating from it, but she also felt the chaotic state of the weave. She knew that a confrontation was inevitable. Kelimver, the warrior, paced the battlements. He looked out at the sea of torches in the distance. He saw the banner of the Black Hand flapping in the night wind. He knew his old enemy was out there. He had a personal history with Bane's curse. He felt the weight of destiny settling on his shoulders. Sirik, the thief, was different. He was watching. He was calculating. He looked at the tablet, and he looked at the gods, and he saw opportunity. The seeds of his future betrayal were being watered by the tension of the siege. Bane's strategy was simple. He would wait. He would let the fear rot the city from the inside. And then, when they were weak, he would strike. He set up his command tent on a hill overlooking the main gate. Every morning, he would emerge in his black armor. He would stand there, motionless, for hours. He was a statue of malice. He wanted the defenders on the walls to see him. He wanted them to know that death was watching them. He also began to use his priests. The clerics of Bane, energized by the proximity of their avatar, began to cast rituals. They summoned clouds of darkness that hung over the city, blocking out the sun. They sent plagues of insects over the walls. They whispered nightmares into the sleep of the guards. It was psychological warfare on a divine scale, but Torm was not idle. Inside the Temple of Torm, the loyal fury was gathering his strength. He knew that Bane would not wait forever. He knew that a clash was coming. Torm was different from Bane. He was a paladin in essence. He followed the rules. He believed in honor, but he also knew that you cannot reason with a tiger. You cannot negotiate with a storm. Torm began to instruct his high priests. He told them of a ritual, a dangerous, forbidden ritual called the Duty's Bond. It was a way to channel the faith of the worshippers directly into the avatar. It would grant him immense power, enough to match even the most ancient of evils. But Torm warned them, the cost would be high. To channel that much energy through a mortal shell, It would burn. It would consume. The people of Tantras did not care. They offered themselves. Thousands of citizens knelt in the streets, praying to Torm, offering their strength, their life force, to their protector. Outside the walls, Bane felt this surge of energy. He felt the light growing inside the city. It annoyed him. It tasted like hope. And Bane hated hope. He decided the time for waiting was over. He called for Saul Kembril. He called for his generals. "Prepare the assault," Bane said. His voice was like grinding rocks. "We attack at dawn. I will lead the vanguard. I will rip the gates off their hinges myself." The siege of Tantras was about to turn into the battle of the gods. The stage is now fully set. We have the unstoppable force of Bane, driven by desperation and arrogance, hammering at the gates. We have the immovable object of Torm, fueled by the sacrifice and love of his people, waiting on the other side. And caught in the middle are the mortals, the heroes who hold the key to everything. As the sun began to rise on that fateful morning, it did not look like a normal sunrise. The light was filtered through the smoke of the siege fires. It was a blood-red dawn. The drums of the Gentler began to beat. Boom, boom, boom. A rhythm that mimicked the heartbeat of a giant. Bane mounted his nightmare. He drew his black sword. The blade seemed to drink the meager light of the morning. He pointed the tip toward the city gates. A horn blew. A deep, mournful sound that echoed across the Dragon Reach. The charge began. In the next section, we will witness the violence. We will see the walls of Tantras shake. We will see the avatar of Bane breach the defenses. And we will see the moment when Torm steps out to meet him. We are approaching the first death, the death of the tyrant. The road to Tantras has ended. The slaughter is about to begin. The sun has risen, but the light is weak. The smoke from the siege fires has created a false twilight over the city of Tantras. In the previous section, we stood on the precipice of war. We saw the black army of Gentle keep poised to strike. We saw the defenders on the walls, gripping their spears with sweating hands. Now, the waiting is over. Now, the earth begins to shake. You can hear it. It is a low rumble at first. It is the sound of thousands of boots hitting the hard-packed earth in unison. It is the sound of the Gentler war chant, a guttural, rhythmic shouting that praises the Lord of Strife. The siege engines loose their first volley. Huge stones, wrapped in pitch and set aflame, arc through the sky. They look like falling stars. They crash into the white stone walls of Tantras with a sound like thunder. Dust and debris explode outward. But this is not a normal siege. This is not a battle between men. This is a stage for the gods. Bane rides forward. He does not hide behind his troops. He is the spear tip. His nightmare steed gallops toward the main gate. The defenders on the walls loose their arrows. A rain of steel tips falls upon the Black Lord, but they shatter against his armor. They bounce off his skin like rain off a stone roof. Bane reaches the great iron gates of the city. These gates have stood for centuries. They are reinforced with magic. They are barred with beams of oak as thick as a man's waist. Bane dismounts. He raises his gauntleted fist. He does not use a battering ram. He uses his own divine strength. He strikes the iron. Clang. The sound is deafening. It resonates through the bones of every person in the city. The metal buckles. The wood splinters. Bane strikes again and again. With the third blow, the hinges scream and fail. The gates of Tantras, the pride of the city, fall inward with a crash that shakes the foundations of the nearby temples. Bane steps through the dust. He is inside. Panic erupts. The city guard charges, brave men and women desperate to protect their homes. Bane swings his black sword. He moves with a speed that belies his size. He does not just kill, he obliterates. Soldiers are thrown through the air like ragdolls. The morale of the defenders shatters instantly. How can you fight a storm? How can you fight an earthquake? The gentler army pours in behind him. The streets of Tantras become a slaughterhouse, but then a horn sounds. It is not a horn of war. It is a clear, bright note. It sounds like a church bell ringing on a crisp winter morning. It cuts through the screams. It cuts through the clash of steel. From the temple of Torm, a golden light erupts. The light is so intense that the gentler soldiers shield their eyes. Bane stops. He looks up. He narrows his red eyes. He knows this light. Out of the brilliance steps Torm. The loyal fury has manifested. His avatar is magnificent. He stands as a towering warrior, clad in plate armor that shines like the sun. His helm is shaped like the head of a lion. In his hands, he holds a massive greatsword. He does not radiate fear. He radiates resolve. He radiates a sense of absolute, unshakable duty. The two gods stand facing each other in the ruined market square. The battle around them stops. The orcs lower their axes. The guards lower their shields. Everyone knows that what happens next is beyond them. This is the main event. Bane laughs. It is a dry, rasping sound. He mocks Torm. He calls him a fool for protecting mortals who are destined to die anyway. He demands the tablet of fate. He demands surrender. Torm does not laugh. He does not speak. He simply raises his sword in a salute. It is a gesture of respect for the combat, if not for the opponent. Then they charge. The impact of their collision creates a shockwave that knocks the surrounding soldiers off their feet. Windows shatter for 3 blocks. The sound of their weapons meeting is not like metal on metal. It is like a thunderclap trapped in a bottle. Bane fights with brutality. He uses his mace and his sword. He summons blasts of dark energy. He tries to overwhelm Torm with sheer ferocity. He is the stronger god, historically. He is a greater power. Torm is a lesser power. In the celestial hierarchy, Bane should win this fight. But Torm has something Bane does not. Torm has the duty's bond. We must pause to explain this mechanic, because it is critical to understanding the death of Bane. Torm knew he was outmatched in raw power. So, he made a pact with his faithful. Thousands of worshippers in Tantras had volunteered for a ritual. They offered their life force to fuel their god. Every time Bane strikes Torm, every time the golden armor dents or the divine flesh is cut, Torm draws upon this reservoir. But it is a tragic fuel. As Torm heals, his worshippers die. In the temple, rows of priests and commoners slump over, their lives extinguished to keep their god standing. Torm feels every death. He feels the grief of every soul that departs to empower him. This fuels his rage. This fuels his determination. He is fighting not just for victory, but to make their sacrifice mean something. The fight spills out of the market square. They crash through buildings. A tavern is reduced to splinters as Bane throws Torm through the wall. A warehouse collapses as Torm drives Bane into the stone pillars. They move toward the harbor. The water of the Dragon Reach begins to boil from the heat of their energies. Bane is starting to realize that something is wrong. Torm should be tiring. Torm should be broken. But the Golden Warrior keeps getting up. He keeps swinging. Bane grows desperate. He decides to use his full power. He stops holding back. He channels the entirety of his divine essence into his fists. He wants to end this. He catches Torm with a backhand blow that sends the loyal fury skipping across the water of the harbor like a stone. Torm crashes into a pier, destroying a docked galley. Bane leaps into the air. He intends to land on Torm and crush him into the mud of the harbor floor. But Torm rises. The water streams off his golden armor. He looks at the city. He feels the dwindling number of souls connecting to him. He knows he has only one chance. He cannot defeat Bane in a war of attrition. He has to end it now. He has to use the suicide maneuver. There is a concept in the realms known as divine burn. It is when an avatar releases the entirety of its energy in a single, catastrophic burst. It is a move that guarantees the destruction of the avatar. Torm centers himself. He ignores the pain. He ignores the blood. He waits for Bane to descend. As the Black Lord falls toward him, screaming a cry of victory, Torm unleashes the power. It is not a spell. It is pure, unadulterated divine will. Torm grapples Bane. He catches the black armor with his golden gauntlets. He locks his arms around the tyrant. Bane's eyes go wide. For the first time since the fall, he feels true terror. He realizes what Torm is doing. He tries to break free. He hammers at Torm's helmet. He claws at the armor. "You will die too," Bane screams. "You fool, you will die too." Torm does not answer. He simply tightens his grip. He channels every ounce of magic, every prayer, every sacrificed soul into this embrace. The air around them begins to distort. Gravity fails. The water of the harbor rises up in a great column around them. The light becomes blinding. It shifts from gold to white, and then to a color that has no name. The explosion is silent at first. The pressure wave hits before the sound. The harbor of Tantras is vaporized. The water is turned instantly to steam. The ships are disintegrated. The shockwave rolls over the city, flattening the buildings near the docks. The gentler army is blown backward like leaves in a hurricane. Then comes the sound, a roar that splits the sky. It is the sound of reality tearing. In the center of the blast, two figures are silhouetted against the blinding radiance. One is struggling, thrashing, trying to escape. The other is still, holding on with the grip of eternity. And then they are gone. The light collapses in on itself. A vacuum is created. The air rushes back in with a crack. Where the two gods stood, there is nothing. No bodies, no armor, no weapons. Just a crater in the harbor floor, filling rapidly with the rushing sea. Bane is dead. Let that sink in. The Lord of Strife, the Black Lord, the god who held the world in a grip of terror for thousands of years. He is gone. His avatar was not just killed, it was unmade. His essence, trapped in that mortal shell, was shattered into 1 billion fragments. A psychic scream echoes across the cosmos. Every priest of Bane in the world falls to their knees, clutching their chest. They feel the connection snap. They feel the void where their god used to be. The Gentarim soldiers look at each other. The fear spell is broken. The command aura is gone. They are suddenly just men standing in a ruined city far from home. Panic sets in. The army breaks. Without Bane to drive them, they have no will to fight. They turn and flee. They trample each other in their haste to get away from the city that killed a god. But Torm is dead too. The cost was absolute. In the temple of Torm, the high priest weeps. He knows. He felt the final surge. He felt the silence that followed. Torm sacrificed himself to stop the tyrant. The silence that descends on Tantras is heavy. The dust settles. The survivors crawl out of the rubble. They look toward the harbor. The sea is calm again, though it is choked with wreckage. The heroes Midnight, Kelimver, Cyric, and Adon watch from a high vantage point. They survived. They still have the tablet of fate, but they are shaken. They have witnessed the death of gods. They realize that the stakes are higher than they ever imagined. Kelimver, in particular, is quiet. He stares at the spot where Bane died. He feels a strange sensation, a pull. He does not know it yet, but the portfolio of the dead, the power of tyranny and strife, is now up for grabs. The energy has to go somewhere. For now, the threat to Tantras is over. The Black Army is scattering. But the story is not over. Bane is dead, yes, but the dead three were a triumvirate. Bane was the muscle. He was the loud threat, but there is another. Myrkul is still out there. While Bane was smashing gates and screaming challenges, Myrkul was working in the dark. Myrkul was in Waterdeep. Myrkul knew that Bane might fail. In fact, Myrkul might have counted on it. With Bane gone, the balance of power shifts. The focus of the story moves west. It moves to the City of Splendors. The death of Bane was a violent, explosive event. It was a warrior's death. But the death of Myrkul will be different. It will be a horror story. It will be a tale of necromancy, of ancient artifacts, and of the dead refusing to stay in their graves. Bane has fallen. The first domino has toppled. Come, Let us leave the ruins of Tantras. Let us leave the mourning priests of Torm and the fleeing soldiers of the Gentarim. We must travel across the continent. We must travel to the Sword Coast. We must go to Waterdeep. There, in the shadows of Mount Waterdeep, the Lord of Bones is waiting. He has heard the psychic scream of Bane's death. He knows he is alone now, and a desperate god of death is a terrifying thing. In the next section, we will explore Myrkul's operations. We will see how he infested the greatest city in the world. We will learn about the Crown of Horns, and we will prepare for the second death. The Black Lord is dust. Long live the Lord of Bones. The dust has settled over the harbor of Tantras. The sea has swallowed the crater where a god of tyranny and a god of duty annihilated one another. But while the east coast of Farron mourns and rebuilds, our eyes must turn west. We must cross the vast expanse of the Heartlands. We must cross the Sunset Mountains and the High Moor. We must travel all the way to the edge of the trackless sea. We are going to Waterdeep, the city of splendors, the crown of the north. Imagine a city of 100,000 souls. It is a metropolis of towering spires, bustling markets, and deep political intrigue. In normal times, it is the jewel of civilization. But in the year of shadows, it has become a prison. While Bane was screaming and breaking walls in the east, Myrkul was here. The Lord of Bones operates differently than the Lord of Strife. Bane was a creature of ego. He needed you to know he was crushing you. Myrkul is different. Myrkul is the entropy that sits in the corner of the room. He is the dust that gathers on the windowsill. He is the inevitable, cold silence that waits for us all. Myrkul had felt the death of Bane when the shockwave of Torm's sacrifice rippled through the magical weave. Myrkul did not weep for his fallen ally. He did not rage. He stood in the shadows of a crypt in the city of the dead, Waterdeep's vast walled cemetery, and he smiled. In the calculus of the Dead Three, there was always a rivalry. With Baal, the Lord of Murder, having met his end at Boresker Bridge, and now Bane destroyed at Tantras, Myrkul was the last one standing. He was the sole possessor of the Dark Legacy. The stolen tablets of fate were within reach. If he could secure them, he would not have to share the power with anyone. He would be the supreme god of death. Let us look at his avatar. While Bane chose the form of a dark tyrant in black armor, Myrkul chose a form that was far more primal and terrifying. He appeared as the Reaper. Imagine a figure hovering just above the ground. He is draped in robes that are not made of cloth, but of rotting funeral shrouds. They move as if caught in a wind that no one else can feel. Beneath the hood, there is no face. There is only a skull. It is a bleached, white skull with burning lights in the eye sockets. His hands are skeletal claws, and in those hands he clutches a scythe. But it is not a farmer's tool. It is a weapon of metaphysical destruction. The blade is dark, etched with runes that scream when you look at them. This was the entity that was haunting Waterdeep. He had infiltrated the city weeks prior. He did not march in through the gates with an army. He he slipped in with the fog. He found the city of the dead, the massive graveyard district that sits within the city walls. It was the perfect headquarters for him. You must understand the unique magical situation in Waterdeep during this time. The city is governed by the Lords of Waterdeep, a secret council. It is protected by Kelvin Blackstaff Aronson, one of the most powerful archmages in existence. But Kelvin was exhausted. The Avatar crisis had broken the weave. Magic was wild and dangerous. Kelvin was spending every waking hour trying to maintain the magical wards that kept the city from collapsing into the ocean or catching fire. He was fighting a war against the laws of physics. Myrkul knew this. He knew the Blackstaff was distracted. So, the Lord of Bones began his work. He began to collect the one resource that was suddenly in oversupply: souls. Because the doors to the outer planes were locked by Lord Io, the souls of the dead could not leave Toril. When a beggar died in the dock ward, his spirit did not travel to the fugue plane. It stayed. It hovered over his corpse. It wandered the alleyways, confused and cold. Myrkul became a beacon for these lost spirits. He called to them. He did not offer them comfort. He offered them purpose. He bound them to his will. Slowly, secretly, the city of the dead began to fill up. Not with bodies, but with an army of ghosts. Shadows lengthened. The temperature in the district dropped until frost formed on the gravestones, even in the height of summer. But Myrkul was not just building an army. He was hunting. He knew that the heroes Midnight, Kelimver, Cyric, and Adon were coming. He knew they had retrieved the first tablet of fate from Bane's grasp, or rather, the chaos of the aftermath, and he knew they had to bring the tablets to Waterdeep. Why Waterdeep? Because of the Celestial Stairway. At the peak of Mount Waterdeep, the great mountain that shields the city from the sea, there appeared a manifestation. It was a ladder of light, a direct connection to the Overgod, Lord Io. This was the delivery point. This was where the tablets had to be returned to end the time of troubles. Myrkul intended to intercept them. He intended to take the tablets at the finish line. The atmosphere in the city was suffocating. The citizens of Waterdeep are used to weird occurrences. They are used to adventurers and monsters. But this was different. There was a sense of impending doom that hung over the streets like a shroud. The Griffin Cavalry, the city's aerial defenders, were grounded. Their mounts were too spooked to fly, and the wild magic storms in the sky made air travel suicide. The city watch was overwhelmed by riots and doomsday cults. And in the sewers, things were moving. Rats, ghouls, creatures that shy away from the light were becoming bold. Myrkul's plan involved an artifact of immense evil, the Crown of Horns. We must take a moment to discuss this item, for it is central to the lore of Myrkul's death and his eventual legacy. The Crown of Horns is an ancient Netherese artifact. It was once associated with the mythal of the floating cities. It is a circlet of electrum set with black diamonds, adorned with 4 bone horns. It is an item of corruption. It grants the wearer control over the undead, but it slowly consumes their soul. Myrkul had possessed this item for a long time. In his avatar form, he did not just wear it, he was attuned to it. It was the anchor that helped him maintain his control over the legion of spirits he was amassing. As the heroes approached the city, Myrkul made his move. He did not reveal himself yet. He used his agents, the Night Riders. These were undead lieutenants, mounted on skeletal horses that could phase through walls. Myrkul sent them out to harass the heroes. He sent them to steal the tablets. The chase through the city was chaotic. Midnight and her companions had arrived via magical transport, exhausted and battered from their journey across the continent. They found a city that was teetering on the edge of anarchy. They sought refuge with Kelvin Blackstaff at Blackstaff Tower. Blackstaff Tower is a fortress of magic. It is a spire of black stone that looks like it was grown rather than built. Inside, Kelvin was trying to coordinate the defense of the city. When the heroes arrived, bringing with them the Tablet of Fate, Kelvin realized the gravity of the situation. He knew Myrkul was here. He could feel the necrotic rot in the air. The Lord of Bones is in the city of the dead, Kelvin told them. He is waiting for you to make a mistake. But they had no choice. They had to get to the mountain, and to get to the mountain, they had to cross the city. Myrkul, sitting on a throne of tombstones in the center of the necropolis, sensed their arrival at the tower. He stood up. He raised his scythe. It was time to stop hiding. He slammed the butt of his scythe into the ground. The ground of Waterdeep shook. Not an earthquake of tectonic plates, but an earthquake of magical resonance. In that moment, Myrkul cast a spell that he had been preparing since his arrival, a spell that would use the stored energy of thousands of trapped souls. He breached the walls of the city of the dead. The gates of the cemetery burst open. But it wasn't just the physical gates. The magical wards that kept the undead contained within the district were shattered. A fog rolled out. A thick, yellow-green fog that smelled of sulfur and old blood. It spilled into the streets of the trades ward. It spilled into the market, and with the fog came the dead. This was the beginning of the end for Myrkul, though he did not see it that way. He saw it as his ascension. By unleashing the undead on the city, he forced the defenders to split their attention. Kelvin Blackstaff could not come after him if he was busy saving the citizens from zombies. The city guard could not help the heroes if they were fighting skeletons in the streets. Myrkul had turned the populace of Waterdeep into hostages. The panic was absolute. Shopkeepers barricaded their doors. Nobles fled to their high towers. The streets became a battleground. But Myrkul's gaze was fixed on one person. Midnight, he knew she was the key. She was the one Mystra had been guiding. She was the wizard who held the potential to become the new goddess of magic. If Myrkul could kill her, he would not only get the tablets, but he would also eliminate a future rival. He began to move his avatar out of the graveyard. Imagine the sight. The Reaper, 30 feet tall, floating above the rooftops of the city. His robes trail behind him like storm clouds. His scythe cuts through the chimneys and spires. He is heading toward Blackstaff Tower. He is heading toward the mountain. This movement of the Avatar is crucial. In Tantras, Bane forced the fight. In Waterdeep, Myrkul was the environment. He was the atmosphere, but now he was condensing into a singular point of threat. As he moved, the ambient necromancy was so strong that flowers wilted in window boxes as he passed. Milk curdled in the pantry. Animals dropped dead of fright. He was bringing the concept of death to a city that celebrated life. The heroes inside the tower saw him coming. They saw the giant skeletal figure looming over the skyline. Kelemver, the warrior who would eventually become the new lord of the dead, looked at Myrkul. He felt a strange resonance. Just as he had felt with Bane, he felt a connection to the power Myrkul wielded. It was a foreshadowing of his destiny. He realized that Myrkul was not just a monster. He was a job opening. Sirik, the thief, saw something else. He saw a god who was desperate. He saw a god who was gambling everything on one final throw of the dice. And Sirik, being a gambler himself, began to wonder how he could turn this to his advantage. Midnight looked at Myrkul and saw only an abomination. She saw the disruption of the natural order. She gripped her staff. She gripped the tablet of fate. She knew that there would be no negotiation. The stage was set for the second great death. But before the final clash, there was the night of the walking dead. Myrkul's assault on the city was not just a distraction. It was a harvest. He was feeding. Every soldier that fell to his undead minions sent a spark of energy back to the Avatar. He was growing larger. He was growing more solid. He was trying to achieve what Bane had failed to do. Bane tried to use the sudden burst of the duty's bond. Myrkul was using the slow, steady consumption of a city. It is a horrific image, the city of splendors, illuminated not by magical streetlights, but by the fires of burning buildings. The sounds of commerce replaced by the moans of the reanimated, and floating above it all, the silent, skeletal grin of the Lord of Bones. He reached the base of Blackstaff Tower. He did not knock. He raised his scythe and swung it at the base of the tower. The magical defenses of Kelban Aronson flared. Sparks of blue and purple energy cascaded down the masonry. The tower shuddered. "Give me the tablets," Myrkul's voice boomed. It was a voice that sounded like dirt falling on a coffin lid. "Give them to me, and I will leave your city a graveyard, but I will leave it." It was a lie. He would never leave. He would turn Waterdeep into his new capital. He would turn the Sword Coast into a kingdom of the dead. The heroes knew this. Kelban knew this. The battle for Waterdeep had begun. We have now established the stakes. We have established the location. The Lord of Bones has revealed himself. He has played his hand. He has unleashed his full power, but he has made a mistake. He has underestimated the resilience of mortals, and he has underestimated the woman named Midnight. In the next section, we will zoom in on the horror of that night. We will see the specific battles in the streets. We will see how the common folk fought back. And we will see the heroes step out of the tower to face the Reaper. The night of the walking dead is upon us. The sun has set over the Sword Coast, but tonight, darkness does not bring rest. Tonight, darkness brings the grave. In the previous section, we watched the Lord of Bones, Myrkul, breach the magical wards of the City of the Dead. We saw the yellow-green fog begin to spill out into the streets of Waterdeep. We saw the avatar of the Reaper looming over the skyline, his scythe poised to strike at the heart of the city. Now, we must descend from the high view. We must go down into the streets. We must experience the terror of the night of the walking dead. You are standing in the market ward. Under normal circumstances, this place would be quiet at this hour, save for the occasional patrol of the city watch or the distant sound of revelry from a tavern. But tonight, the silence is heavy. It is a pressurized silence. The fog is the first thing you notice. It is not like the sea mist that rolls in from the harbor. This fog is heavy. It clings to the ground. It swirls around your ankles like a living thing. It smells of sulfur, of wet earth, and of something sweet and cloying, like flowers left too long on a grave. Then you hear the sound. It is a shuffling sound, a scraping sound. It is the sound of thousands of feet dragging against the cobblestones. It is the sound of bone clicking against stone. From the open gates of the City of the Dead, they come. You must understand the history of Waterdeep to understand the scale of this horror. This city has stood for centuries. It has been a hub of civilization for generations. And for all those centuries, the people have buried their dead. They buried them in the necropolis. They buried them in deep crypts. They buried lords, ladies, soldiers, and beggars. Myrkul has woken them all. The first wave is the zombies. These are the recently dead. They are shambling, mindless husks. They wear the tattered remains of their burial clothes. Some still wear the armor of the city watch. They move with a singular, driving hunger. They are not fast, but they are relentless. They do not feel pain. They do not feel fear. They simply march forward, driven by the will of the avatar that floats above them. Behind them come the skeletons. These are the older dead. The flesh has rotted away, leaving only the bleached bone. They are faster. They are armed. Many of them clutch rusted swords or spears that were buried with them. They move with a jerky, unnatural coordination. The magic that animates them is stronger, more precise. But it is not just the mindless infantry. Myrkul has released the predators. Ghouls and ghasts, creatures that feast on the flesh of the living, scamper across the rooftops. They move on all fours, their long tongues hanging from their mouths. Their claws are sharp enough to rend chainmail. They do not march. They hunt. They leap from the shadows, dragging screaming citizens into the alleyways. Shadows and wraiths drift through the walls of houses. They bypass the barricaded doors. They slide into the bedrooms where families are huddling in fear. Their touch is cold. It drains the strength from a warrior's arm. It turns a healthy man into a shivering, gray husk in a matter of seconds. The city watch attempts to form a defensive line at the edge of the market. Imagine a shield wall of 50 men. They are brave. They are trained. They lock their shields together. They lower their spears. They shout to keep their courage up, but they are fighting a tide. The undead crash into the shield wall. The sound is sickening. The weight of the bodies pushes the guards back. A zombie is impaled on a spear, but it keeps clawing, sliding down the shaft to reach the holder. A skeleton slips under the shields and slashes at the ankles of the defenders. And then the panic sets in. This is Myrkul's true weapon. It is not the claws or the teeth. It is the aura of despair. The avatar of Myrkul radiates a magical field of fear. It is a palpable pressure that weighs on the soul. It whispers to you. It tells you that resistance is futile. It tells you that death is inevitable. It tells you that your gods have abandoned you. For the soldiers on the line, this psychic assault is devastating. Men who would stand their ground against an orc charge suddenly drop their weapons and flee. They weep like children. They curl up in balls, waiting for the end. The discipline of the watch crumbles. The line breaks. The flood of undead pours into the rest of the city. We must shift our gaze to the dock ward. This is the rough part of town, the home of smugglers, thieves, and the poor. Here, the battle is different. There are no organized shield walls here. There is only chaotic, desperate street fighting. The criminal guilds, the Xanathar Guild, and the Gentarim agents who were hiding in the city find themselves fighting back to back with the very guards who usually hunt them. In the face of the apocalypse, old grudges are forgotten. A thief stabs a ghoul that is attacking a merchant. A guard pulls a smuggler out of the grasp of a zombie. But even here, the numbers are overwhelming. The dead do not tire. The living do. Every time a defender falls, Myrkul's power grows. He is feeding on the death. He is feeding on the terror. Every scream is a prayer to the Lord of Bones. High above this carnage, the avatar of Myrkul drifts toward Blackstaff Tower. He is a titan of death. His skeletal form is shrouded in the smoke of the burning city. His eyes are twin pits of cold fire. He ignores the chaos below him. To him, the slaughter in the streets is just background noise. It is just the preparation of the meal. His focus is on the tower. Blackstaff Tower is a marvel of magical architecture. It is not just stone. It is a vertical fortress of enchantments. Kelvin Aronson, the Blackstaff, has layered protections over it for decades. There are wards against teleportation, wards against physical damage, wards against evil. Myrkul raises his scythe. The blade is blacker than the night sky. It hums with the power of the crown of horns. He swings. The impact is silent, but the result is spectacular. A web of blue lightning erupts around the tower as the wards try to repel the divine weapon. The air crackles with ozone. The ground shakes. Inside the tower, the impact feels like a physical blow. Let us go inside. Let us stand in the main chamber of the tower with the heroes. Kelvin Aronson is leaning against a table, his face pale. He is one of the most powerful wizards in the world, an archmage of the highest order. But he is drained. He has been holding the city together with his will for weeks. The wild magic of the time of troubles makes every spell a physical exertion. The first ward is down, Kelvin says. His voice is raspy. He is stripping the defenses like layers of an onion. Midnight stands near the window. She looks out at the giant skeletal face looming in the darkness. She clutches the tablet of fate. She can feel the object vibrating. It wants to be used, but she also feels the chaotic state of the weave. She knows that if she unleashes too much power, she might destroy the city herself. Kelimver is pacing. The big warrior is agitated. He checks his sword, though he has checked it 10 times in the last hour. He feels the pull of Myrkul's presence. It is a siren's song to him, the curse that he bears, the curse that turns him into a panther when he does not perform an altruistic act, is reacting to the divine energy. He feels a kinship with the reaper that terrifies him. We cannot stay here, Kelimver says. If we stay, he brings the tower down on top of us. We become his prize in the rubble. Sirik is sitting in the corner. He is sharpening a dagger. His eyes dart between the tablet, the wizard, and the window. Sirik is the wild card. He is afraid, yes, but he is also calculating. He sees the power Myrkul wields. He sees the raw authority of a god. He wonders what it would feel like to hold that scythe. So we go out there, Sirik asks, a sneer on his face. We walk out the front door and ask the giant skeleton to play nice. Adon, the cleric of Sune, is praying, but his prayers are hollow. Sune, the goddess of beauty, is also fallen. Her beauty offers no protection against this ugliness. Adon is having a crisis of faith. He looks at his hands, which used to channel healing light, and sees only useless flesh. Kelvin straightens up. He looks at Midnight. He wants the tablets, Kelvin says. But more than that, he wants the destruction of hope. He is not just attacking the body of the city. He is attacking its spirit. If he takes the tower, if he kills the heroes of the realms in plain sight, then Waterdeep falls. And if Waterdeep falls, the North falls. Another crash shakes the tower. Dust falls from the ceiling. The stone groans. The second ward is failing, Kelvin reports. He is accelerating. Myrkul's voice booms from outside. It does not come through the ears. It manifests directly in the mind. Come out, little wizard, the voice says. Bring me the slate, bring me the laws, or watch as I turn this tower into your tomb. The psychological pressure is immense. Myrkul is level 30 plus in power. His charisma score, his intimidation factor, is off the charts. Lesser beings would have walked out and surrendered just to stop the voice in their heads. But these are not lesser beings. These are the heroes of the Lance. They have walked through the hells. They have faced Bane. Midnight makes the decision. We go to the mountain, she says. We have to get the tablets to the celestial stairway. It is the only way to end this. The streets are full of dead, Sirik points out. Then we fight through them, Kelimver growls. Better to die fighting than to die hiding in a hole. Kelbin nods. I will lower the remaining wards at the base. I will open a path. I can give you a burst of speed, a cloak of shadows. But once you are out, you are on your own. I must stay here. I must hold his attention. I must make him think the prize is still in the tower. It is a brave plan, a desperate plan. Kelbin begins to weave a spell. It is complex magic, risky in the current climate. He draws upon the reserves of the tower itself. Outside, Myrkul raises his scythe for a third strike. He expects the blue lightning of the wards. Instead, the front gates of Blackstaff Tower blast open. A wave of force erupts outward, knocking the nearest zombies off their feet. From the smoke, the heroes emerge. They are running. They are moving with magical haste. They dash into the alleyways, heading south, heading toward Mount Waterdeep. Myrkul pauses. His skeletal head tilts. He senses the movement. He senses the tablets moving away from him. He lets out a sound that might be a laugh. It is a dry, rattling sound that echoes off the buildings. You run, he whispers to the city, but you cannot outrun the end. He turns away from the tower. He begins to glide over the city, following the heroes. And as he moves, he calls to his children. Stop them, he commands the legion of the dead. Bring them to me. The chase is on. But the heroes are not just running through empty streets. They are running through a nightmare. Imagine the scene in the narrow streets of the castle ward. The fog is so thick you can barely see 5 feet ahead. Shapes loom out of the mist. Hands reach out from the gutters. Kelimver is in the lead. His sword, a magical blade that glows with a faint light, is a blur. He is a whirlwind of steel. He cleaves through skeletons. He smashes zombies. He is fighting not just for survival, but to clear a path for Midnight. Midnight is in the center. She holds the tablet wrapped in cloth. She is casting defensive spells. Shield, mage armor, magic missile. Her magic is wild. A bolt of force hits a zombie and turns it into a potted plant. Another spell causes a section of the cobblestones to turn into mud. She has to focus. She has to keep the weave stable around her. Sirik brings up the rear. He is fighting dirty. He uses daggers. He trips the undead. He uses the shadows. He is terrified, but his survival instinct is in overdrive. Adon runs with them, using his mace to smash the skulls of anything that gets too close. They are making progress. They are reaching the base of the mountain. But Myrkul is getting closer. The giant avatar is simply floating over the buildings that they have to run around. He is closing the distance, and he decides to use the crown of horns. He activates the artifact's power. He does not just animate the dead, he animates the city. The gargoyles on the rooftops turn their stone heads. Their eyes glow green. They detach from the eaves and swoop down. The statues in the parks step off their plinths. The iron fences twist and writhe like snakes. Myrkul is turning the environment into a weapon. The heroes are pinned down in a small square near the ascent to the mountain. They are surrounded. To the front, a wall of zombies. To the air, a flock of stone gargoyles. And behind them, the avatar of death is descending. This is the moment of absolute hopelessness. This is the moment where the dungeon master looks at the players and asks, "What do you do?" But help comes from an unexpected source. The Griffin Cavalry, despite the orders to stay grounded, despite the terror, a squadron of the Waterdeep Guard has taken to the air. They are the elite. They ride giant griffins, majestic beasts with the head of an eagle and the body of a lion. They dive out of the clouds. They ignore the fear aura. They ignore the lightning. For Waterdeep, the captain screams. The griffins crash into the gargoyles. Talons meet stone. Beaks tear at wings. It is a chaotic, swirling dogfight above the heads of the heroes. The distraction is brief, but it is enough. "Go," Kelemver shouts. Now, they break through the zombie line. They scramble up the rocky slope of Mount Waterdeep. The path is treacherous. It is steep, but it leads up. It leads away from the fog. Myrkul watches the griffins die. He watches them fall from the sky, their bodies broken. He is not impressed. He is annoyed. He turns his gaze to the mountain. He sees the tiny figures climbing. "So be it," Myrkul says. "If you wish to die on the mountain, I will bury you under it." He begins to ascend. He does not climb. He simply rises. He floats up the side of the cliff, his robes brushing the rock face. The final confrontation is at hand. The city below is burning. The dead are feasting. But the fate of the world will be decided on the peak. This concludes Section 7. We have witnessed the horror of the night of the walking dead. We have seen the fall of the city's defenses and the desperate flight of the heroes. In the next section, we will stand on the summit. We will see the celestial stairway, and we will see the beginning of the duel that will end an era. Midnight, the mortal wizard, against Myrkul, the god of death. The climb is over. The fall is about to begin. Take a moment to catch your breath. We have left the burning streets of Waterdeep behind us. We have left the screams of the dying and the shambling horror of the undead legions in the valley below. We are rising. We are climbing the slopes of Mount Waterdeep. The air here is different. It is thin. It is cold. It smells of salt spray from the ocean and the ozone of high-altitude magic. You can feel the wind whipping around the granite peaks. It pulls at your clothes. It tries to push you back, but we must press on. We must follow the heroes to the summit. In the previous section, we witnessed the night of the walking dead. We saw Myrkul turn the City of Splendors into a necropolis. We saw the heroes break through the lines of the dead and begin their desperate ascent. Now, we focus on the woman who is carrying the weight of the world. Midnight. To understand the death of Myrkul, you must understand the birth of the new Mistra, and that birth began here on the rocks of the mountain. Midnight was not a soldier like Kelemver. She was not a rogue like Cyric. She was a wizard, but more than that, she was a conduit. Throughout the time of troubles, she had been guided by the subtle influence of the fallen goddess of magic. She bore a piece of Mistra within her. As she climbed, her lungs burned. Her legs felt like lead. She was exhausted. She had cast spell after spell to keep the zombies at bay. Her magical reserves were dangerously low. In game terms, she was out of spell slots. She was running on cantrips and willpower. But she held the tablet of fate. The tablet was wrapped in heavy cloth and strapped to her back. It was a stone slab, heavy and awkward, but it was also warm. It pulsed against her spine. It whispered to her. It was not a voice she could hear with her ears, but a vibration she could feel in her bones. The tablet knew it was going home. The climb was treacherous. Mount Waterdeep is a steep and jagged peak. In the darkness, illuminated only by the fires of the city below, and the strange bruising colors of the night sky, every step was a risk. A slip meant a fall of thousands of feet. Kelemver led the way. The big warrior was a machine of survival. He pulled Midnight up the steep ledges. He kicked loose rocks away. He kept looking back, his eyes scanning the darkness below. He could feel Myrkul coming. The Lord of Bones was not climbing. He was rising. Imagine a dark cloud moving up the side of a mountain against the wind. That was Myrkul. He floated effortlessly. He did not need handholds. He did not need breath. He simply willed himself upward. The distance between the heroes and the god was closing. Adon the cleric was struggling. He was stumbling. His faith was broken. He was murmuring prayers that had no meaning. Sirik was behind him, pushing him, cursing him. Sirik's fear had turned into a sharp, brittle anger. He blamed Adon for being weak. He blamed Kelemver for being slow. He blamed Midnight for being the target. They reached the summit. The top of Mount Waterdeep is a flat, windswept plateau. It is usually a lonely place home to a griffin eyrie and a watchtower. But tonight, it was the gateway to heaven. In the center of the plateau stood the celestial stairway. It was a breathtaking sight. It looked like a column of pure white light that stretched from the rock all the way up into the swirling chaos of the sky. It was solid and yet translucent. Inside the light, you could see steps that led away from the pain of Toril. Steps that led to the feet of the overgod Lord Io. But the way was barred. Standing at the base of the stairway was a figure. He was immense. He stood over 10 feet tall. He was clad in full plate armor that gleamed with a polished perfection. He held a great sword, the point resting on the stone. He did not move. He did not breathe. It was Helm. Helm, the Vigilant One, the god of guardians. Helm was the only deity who had retained his full divinity during the crisis. Lord Io had tasked him with a single duty: guard the stairway. Allow no god to pass until the tablets of fate were returned. Helm had been the one to strike down Mistra when she tried to force her way past him earlier in the crisis. He was the reason the gods were trapped. He was the ultimate guardian at the gates of divinity. The heroes stopped. They were trapped. Behind them was the cliff and the approaching Lord of Death. Before them was the immovable object of the god of guardians. Midnight stepped forward. She was trembling. She reached for the straps of the tablet. "We have it," she gasped. Her voice was lost in the wind, but she spoke with the authority of the truth. "We have the tablet of fate." Helm did not move. His visor was down. His voice came from everywhere and nowhere. "Present the tablet," Helm commanded. "If it is true, you may pass. If it is a deception, you will face justice." Midnight began to unwrap the stone. Her fingers were numb. The knot was tight. And then the temperature on the plateau dropped 50 degrees in a second. The wind stopped. The sound of the city below vanished. A silence heavy and absolute slammed down on the mountain. Myrkul had arrived. He rose over the lip of the cliff like a rising moon. But it was a moon made of bone and rot. His avatar was fully manifest now. He was huge, hovering at the height of a house. His robes billowed around him, filled with the screaming faces of the souls he had consumed. He did not look at Helm. He knew Helm's rules. Helm would not interfere in a dispute between avatars unless they tried to touch the stairway. As long as Myrkul stayed on the plateau, Helm would just watch. Myrkul looked at Midnight. The girl Myrkul rasped. His voice sounded like a coffin dragging across stone. "You have carried my burden long enough. Give it to me." Kelemver stepped between Midnight and the god. He raised his magical sword. It looked like a needle against the Reaper. "You will not touch her," Kelemver shouted. Myrkul did not even raise his scythe. He simply pointed a skeletal finger. A beam of necrotic energy, black and green, shot from his fingertip. It hit Kelemver in the chest. The warrior was lifted off his feet. He was thrown backward across the plateau. He slammed into a rock formation and slid down motionless. Midnight screamed. She dropped the tablet. She ran to him, but the air between them shimmered. Myrkul was toying with them. He enjoyed the despair. He wanted them to feel the hopelessness before the end. Sirik, seeing the power of the god, scrambled away. He hid behind the base of the celestial stairway, cowering in the shadow of Helm. He watched. He waited. His mind was racing. He saw the tablet lying on the ground. It was unguarded. Myrkul floated forward. He hovered over the tablet. He looked at the ancient runes. This was it. The key to absolute power. If he picked it up, he could present it to Helm. He could ascend. He could rewrite the cosmos. But he made a mistake. He looked at Midnight again. He saw the spark in her. He saw the essence of Mystra, and his hatred for the goddess of magic flared up. He remembered the old rivalries. He remembered that Mystra represented the life and energy that he sought to snuff out. "I will take the stone," Myrkul said, "but first I will snuff out the candle." He turned his attention to Midnight. He raised his scythe. He began to cast a spell. It was not a simple blast. It was a soul trap. He intended to rip her spirit from her body and add it to his collection. Midnight looked up. She saw the scythe. She saw the death of everything she loved, and something inside her broke. Or perhaps something inside her finally connected. She was a wizard. She had studied the weave her entire life. She respected magic. She knew the formulas. But now the formulas were useless. The weave was broken. She realized she could not use magic in the traditional way. She could not ask the weave for permission. She had to command it. She felt the peace of Mistra inside her soul ignite. It was a hot white fire. It flooded her veins. It burned away the fatigue. It burned away the fear. She stood up. Her eyes, usually dark, began to glow with a blue and white radiance. Her hair began to float as if she were underwater. Sparks of raw magic danced off her fingertips. "You want the candle," Midnight said. Her voice was layered. It was her voice, but it was also the voice of something much older and much more powerful. Then burn. She did not cast a fireball. She did not cast a lightning bolt. She reached out with her hands, and she grabbed the raw strands of the damaged weave. She pulled them. She twisted them. A wall of silver fire erupted between her and Myrkul. Myrkul hissed. He recoiled. The silver fire was holy to Mistra. It was the one thing that could burn the Lord of the Dead. "You dare," Myrkul roared. "You are a mortal. You are dust." "I am magic," Midnight replied. The ascension of Midnight had begun. She was no longer just an adventurer. She was becoming an avatar herself. She was channeling the lost divinity of the goddess of magic, but she was untrained. She was raw. She was a fire hose without a nozzle. She unleashed a torrent of energy at Myrkul. It hit his necrotic shield and exploded. The shockwave cracked the stone of the plateau. Myrkul was pushed back. He was surprised. He had expected a sheep, and he found a dragon. But Myrkul was an ancient god. He had eons of experience. He recovered quickly. He began to weave his own counterspell. He summoned the spirits of the dead from the air around him. He formed them into a spear of wailing ghosts. He hurled it at her. Midnight caught the spear with her bare hands. The magic sizzled against her skin. She screamed in pain, but she did not let go. She crushed the spear into light. This was the battle for the summit. It was a clash of opposites. Life against death. Magic against entropy. The future against the past. Helm watched. The vigilant one did not blink. He saw the tablet lying in the dust. He saw Cyric creeping toward it. He saw the Titan and the wizard locking horns. He remained at his post. The rules were the rules. Below them, the city of Waterdeep continued to burn. But the people in the streets looked up. They saw the flashes of light on the mountain. They saw the blue and the black energies colliding in the clouds. They did not know what was happening, but they felt it. They felt the shift in the air. Myrkul realized that he could not simply swat Midnight aside. She was too strong. He needed to use his artifact. He needed the crown of horns. The crown fused to his skeletal brow, began to pulse. It was a dark, rhythmic beating. It drew upon the death energy of the entire city. It funneled the power of the Night of the Walking Dead into a single point. Myrkul grew larger. His scythe began to drip with liquid darkness. "I am the inevitable," Myrkul boomed. "I am the end of all stories. You cannot fight the last page of the book." Midnight stood her ground. She was glowing so brightly now that it was hard to look at her. She was a star in human shape. "The story is not over," she said. She looked at the tablet. She knew she had to protect it, but she also knew she could not hold Myrkul off forever. She needed an opening. She needed to strike a blow that would shatter his form. She began to gather the silver fire. She pulled it from the air, from the ground, from her own soul. She compressed it into a sphere between her hands. Myrkul raised his scythe for a killing blow. He intended to cleave the mountain itself, if necessary. The tension on the peak was absolute. The air was vibrating with enough power to level a castle, and in the shadows, Syrinx smiled. He saw the gods distracted. He saw his moment approaching. But that is a story for the aftermath. For now, the camera focuses on Midnight, the mortal woman who defied a god. She is the last line of defense. If she falls, Myrkul takes the tablets. If she falls, death rules Toril forever. She looks at the Reaper. She takes a step forward. The final duel is about to begin. The destruction of the crown is at hand. This concludes Section 8. We have set the stage on the summit. We have established the transformation of Midnight and the immense threat of Myrkul's full power. In the next section, we will witness the end of the Lord of Bones. We will see the collision of the silver fire and the crown of horns. We will see the shattering of the Avatar and the scattering of the divine essence. The death of gods continues. The summit of Mount Waterdeep has become the center of the universe. In the previous section, we watched the transformation of the mortal wizard Midnight. We saw her ignite with the forbidden, holy energy of the silver fire. We saw the Lord of Bones, Myrkul, realize that his prey had become a predator. Now we stand at the edge of the cliff. The wind is howling, but you cannot hear it. You can only hear the hum of raw magic. You can only hear the sound of reality groaning under the weight of two divine powers about to collide. This is the moment of destruction. This is the moment where the ancient era of death ends and a new, uncertain era begins. Myrkul hovers above the rocky plateau. He is a nightmare made manifest. His skeletal frame is vast, filling the sky. The robes that drape his bones are not cloth. They are woven from the shadows of the grave, and upon his brow sits the crown of horns. Focus on that crown. It is an object of supreme evil. It is crafted from electrum, a metal that glows with a sickly, pale light. 4 bone horns curve upward from the band. Black diamonds, darker than the void between stars, pulse in time with the heartbeat of the Avatar. This artifact is the anchor. It is the battery. It is holding the essence of Myrkul together in this hostile reality. Without it, his avatar would crumble under the weight of its own corruption. Midnight knows this. She stands on the granite rock. She is small compared to the Titan, but she is bright. The silver fire wreathes her body. It flows from her eyes. It streams from her hair. It is a fire that does not burn, it purifies. It is the raw stuff of the weave, the fundamental energy of creation. Myrkul looks down at her. For the first time in eons, he feels a flicker of doubt. He has faced gods before. He has faced armies, but he has never faced the weave itself turned into a weapon. "You are a child playing with a sun," Myrkul booms. His voice shakes the stones on the ground. "You will burn yourself to ash before you touch me." Midnight does not answer. She does not have the breath for words. Every ounce of her concentration is focused on holding the power inside her. She knows she has one shot. She cannot win a protracted duel. She must strike the head. She must strike the crown. She bends her knees. She gathers the energy. And then she launches herself into the air. She does not fly with a spell. She is propelled by the sheer force of the magic expelling from her body. She shoots upward like a comet, a streak of blue and white light cutting through the gloom. Myrkul reacts. He brings the scythe around. The weapon is the length of a ship's mast. The blade is razor sharp and coated in a poison that rots the soul. He swings it with the speed of a striking snake. He intends to swat her out of the air like a fly. Midnight sees the blade coming. Time seems to slow down. She sees the runes etched into the metal. She sees the darkness trailing behind it. She does not dodge. She does not shield. She reaches out with her left hand. She catches the blade. The impact creates a shockwave that clears the fog from the mountain for a mile in every direction. Her hand, wrapped in silver fire, grips the dull edge of the scythe. The metal screams. The necrotic magic of the weapon fights against the divine magic of the wizard. Sparks of conflicting energy rain down on the plateau below. Myrkul roars in frustration. He tries to pull the weapon back, but she is an immovable object. She is anchored by the will of Mystra. With her right hand, she reaches forward. She is close now. She is face to face with the giant's skull. She can see the cold, dead lights in his eye sockets. She can smell the dust of centuries. She targets the crown. Ends, Midnight whispers, and beginnings. She unleashes the silver fire. It is not a beam. It is a deluge. It is a point-blank explosion of pure magical force. She drives her hand toward the crown of horns. Myrkul screams. It is a sound that no mortal should ever hear. It is the sound of a god feeling pain. It is the sound of a concept being unraveled. The silver fire hits the crown. For a heartbeat, nothing happens. The black diamonds absorb the light. The electrum glows red, then white. The artifact tries to consume the energy. It tries to eat the magic as it has eaten so many souls before. But there is too much. Midnight pours everything she has into the strike. She empties her reserves. She pours her life force, her memories, her hope into the spell. Crack. The sound is sharp. It is louder than thunder. It is the sound of the world breaking. A fissure appears in the center of the crown. It runs through the central black diamond. Myrkul flails. He lets go of the scythe. He clutches at his head with his skeletal claws. "No," he bellows. "I am eternal. I am the inevitable." "Nothing is inevitable," Midnight says. She pushes harder. The silver fire turns gold. It turns blinding white. The crown shatters. It does not just break into two pieces, it explodes. Shards of electrum and diamond fly outward like shrapnel. The bone horns disintegrate into powder, and with the destruction of the crown, the anchor is gone. The avatar of Myrkul begins to fail. Imagine a sandcastle hit by a tidal wave. The cohesion is lost instantly. The magical field that held the bones together evaporates. Myrkul's skull begins to crack. Fractures spread across his face. The light in his eyes flickers and dies. The ribs of his giant chest cavity begin to drift apart. The explosion of the avatar is not fiery. It is dusty. It is a sudden, violent expansion of rot and ash. Midnight is thrown backward by the force of the blast. She falls through the air. She is unconscious before she hits the ground. The magic has drained her completely. She is just a girl now, falling from the sky. But she does not hit the rocks. Helm, the vigilant one, moves. The god of guardians has watched the duel without interfering. But now that the duel is over, he steps forward. He catches Midnight in one massive, armored hand. He sets her gently on the stone of the plateau. Above them, the remains of Myrkul are drifting down. It looks like snow, but it is gray and gritty. It is the bone dust of a dead god. The cloud of Myrkul's remains begins to settle. It drifts over the edge of the cliff. It drifts down toward the city of Waterdeep. This is a crucial detail for the lore. This dust is not harmless. It is infused with the last spiteful essence of the Lord of the Dead. As it falls on the city, it carries a curse. It carries the seeds of a plague that will haunt the city for years to come. But the avatar is gone. The threat to the celestial stairway is removed. On the plateau, silence returns. Adon, the cleric of Sune, crawls out from behind a rock. He is shaking. He looks at the pile of dust that was once a god. He looks at Midnight, who is lying still on the stones. Kelemver groans. The warrior pulls himself up. The paralysis of the necrotic beam is fading. He rubs his chest. He looks around, confused. "Is it over?" Kelemver asks. His voice is hoarse. Sirik steps out of the shadows. The thief looks pristine. He did not fight. He did not bleed. He watched. And now he sees the opportunity. Sirik walks over to where the crown of horns exploded. He sees the debris. Most of it is dust. But he sees something else. He sees that the essence of Myrkul did not completely vanish. He sees a faint, dark smoke curling around the shards of the crown. He knows, with a thief's intuition, that the god is not truly gone. Myrkul has hidden himself. He has infested the remnants of his artifact. But Sirik does not care about the past. He cares about the future. He looks at the tablet of fate. It is lying where Midnight dropped it. It is unharmed. He looks at Midnight. She is barely breathing. She is weak. He looks at Kelemver. The warrior is wounded. Sirik realizes that the board is clear. The heavy lifting has been done. The dragon has been slain by the princess. And now the thief can take the gold. But before Sirik can act, Helm speaks. "The debt is paid," Helm says. His voice is like a mountain grinding against another mountain. The enemy is destroyed. The tablet must be returned. Helm points his greatsword at the celestial stairway. Ascend, Helm commands. Present the tablets to the Overgod. End the time of troubles. Midnight stirs. She opens her eyes. They are no longer glowing with the power of the Avatar. They are brown and human and tired. She sits up. She sees the empty sky where Myrkul used to be. She sees the dust on her clothes. "We did it," she whispers. She stands up, swaying. Kelimver rushes to her side to support her. "You did it," Kelimver says. There is awe in his voice. He looks at her, and he realizes that she is no longer the woman he loved. She has become something else. She has touched the divine and survived. They pick up the tablet of fate. There is a moment of hesitation. They know that walking up those stairs means leaving the world they know. It means changing everything. "We have to go," Midnight says. Ao is waiting. They begin to walk toward the light. But what of the crown? We must zoom in on the debris field one last time. We must look at the shards of black diamond lying in the cracks of the granite. Though the Avatar was destroyed, Myrkul had a contingency. He was the Lord of Bones. He always had a plan for death. In the moment of the explosion, he transferred his consciousness. He did not go to the fugue plane. He did not go to the abyss. He went into the dust. He went into the shards. The crown of horns was broken, yes, but it was not unmade. Years later, these shards would be gathered. They would be reforged. The crown would return to plague the realms. It would possess powerful wizards. It would whisper the secrets of the dead. Myrkul was dead, in the sense that he was no longer a god with a portfolio. He lost his station. He lost his power. But he remained as a ghost in the machine, a malignant virus in the magical history of Toril. But for the people of Waterdeep, the immediate nightmare was ending. As the Avatar dissolved, the magic animating the undead army in the city below began to fail. Down in the streets, the zombies stopped moving. They simply collapsed. They became corpses once more. The skeletons fell into piles of harmless bones. The spectral green fog began to dissipate, blown away by a clean wind coming off the sea. The citizens emerged from their hiding places. They saw the sun rising over the mountains in the east. It was a new day. The year of shadows was drawing to a close, but the cost had been astronomical. Thousands were dead. The city was in ruins. The weave was scarred, and on top of the mountain, 3 mortals were walking up a staircase of light to meet God. Midnight carried the tablet. Kelimver walked beside her, his hand on his sword. Sirik walked behind them, his eyes fixed on the backs of his companions. Sirik was thinking. He was thinking about Baal, who died at Borisker Bridge. He was thinking about Bane, who died at Tantras. He was thinking about Myrkul, who died here on the peak. 3 dead gods. 3 empty thrones. Sirik licked his lips. He knew that Lord Ao believed in balance. If 3 gods of evil were gone, someone would have to replace them. Why not me? Sirik thought. Why not me? the destruction of the crown was the end of Myrkul, but it was the beginning of the ascension of the Prince of Lies. As they stepped into the light of the stairway, the material world faded away. The sounds of the wind stopped. They were in the realm of the Overgod. The fight was over. The politics were just beginning. This concludes Section 9. We have witnessed the impossible. We have seen a mortal wizard channel the raw weave to disintegrate a greater deity. We have seen the shattering of the crown of horns and the salvation of Waterdeep. We have one final section remaining. We must deal with the aftermath. We must see what happened when they reached the top of the stairs. We must see how the portfolios were distributed. We must answer the question, who truly won the time of troubles? And we must look at the legacy. We must look at how the death of Bane and Myrkul shaped the next century of Dungeons and Dragons lore. The gods are dead. Long live the new gods. We have reached the final steps. In the previous section, we witnessed the titanic clash on the summit of Mount Waterdeep. We saw the mortal wizard Midnight shatter the crown of horns and disperse the essence of Myrkul, the Lord of Bones. We left our heroes, Midnight, Kelemver, and Cyric, stepping onto the celestial stairway, leaving the broken world behind them to face the judgment of the Overgod. Now, we must walk these last few yards with them, but we must also look forward. We must look at the scars left on the world. We must answer the question that hangs over this entire history. What happens when a god dies? And perhaps more importantly, do they ever truly stay dead? The celestial stairway is not a physical place. It is a transition. As the three companions climbed, the sounds of Toril faded. The smell of smoke and sea salt was replaced by a scent like ozone and old parchment. The light around them was blindingly white, yet it did not hurt their eyes. It was the light of absolute truth. But there is a shadow on the stairs. We must address the final tragedy of the Avatar crisis. In our last view, Kelemver was walking beside Midnight, but Cyric was behind them. Cyric, the thief. Cyric, the opportunist. Throughout the journey, Cyric had wielded a sword named Godsbane. He believed it was a magical weapon he had found. In truth, it was the avatar of another god, Mask, the Lord of Shadows, disguised as a blade. Mask had been whispering to Cyric. He had been feeding Cyric's paranoia. He had been feeding Cyric's ambition. As they neared the top of the stairs, the presence of Lord Au became palpable. It was a pressure that forced the soul to bare itself. Cyric realized something. He realized that Kelemver was a hero. He realized that Midnight was a chosen one. They were noble. They were good. If they stood before Au, they would be rewarded. And Cyric would be forgotten. He would just be the thief who tagged along. Cyric could not accept that. He looked at Kelemver's back. He looked at the man who had been his companion, his rival, and his friend. And he listened to the whisper of the sword. Strike, the sword whispered. Take the glory. Be the one who stands alone. Cyric did not hesitate. It happened in the space between heartbeats. Cyric lunged. He drove the blade of Godsbane through Kelemver's back. The big warrior gasped. He did not scream. He looked down at the red steel protruding from his chest. He looked at Midnight. His eyes were full of confusion and betrayal. And then the sword drank him. This is a terrifying piece of lore. God's Bane did not just kill the body, it trapped the soul. Kelimver did not go to the afterlife. He was sucked into the blade, trapped in a pocket dimension within the steel, prisoner to the weapon that killed him. Midnight screamed. She reached for him, but he was gone, his body dissolving into mist as the sword consumed his essence. She spun around, magic flaring in her hands. She looked at Sirik. Sirik stood there, panting. He grinned. It was a grin of madness. He held the tablet of fate in one hand and the murder weapon in the other. He was weak, Sirik said. He would have hesitated. I did what had to be done. Before Midnight could incinerate him, the environment shifted. The stairs ended. They stood in the Hall of Concordance. It was a space of infinite size. The floor was made of glass, and beneath it, you could see the swirling galaxies of the phlogiston. Standing before them was Lord Au. Au appeared as a man of indeterminate age. His robes were woven from the fabric of the cosmos. He was 12 feet tall, yet he seemed to tower over the concept of height itself. His face was impassive. He did not look angry. He did not look happy. He looked like an accountant who had found an error in the ledger. The tablets, Au said. His voice was the sound of a closing door. Midnight, tears streaming down her face, fell to her knees. She was broken by the loss of Kelimver. She had saved the world, but she had lost her heart. Sirik stepped forward. He held up the tablet. He stood tall. He projected confidence, though inside he was screaming with terror. I have returned them, Sirik declared. I have done what the gods could not. I have slain the traitors. I have brought the law back to the heavens. Au took the tablets. He looked at the stone slabs that had caused so much suffering. He looked at the names inscribed upon them. And then he crushed them. Au squeezed his hand, and the tablets of fate turned into dust. These were never the point, Au said. They were a test to see if the gods understood their place. They did not. Au looked at the two mortals. He looked at the empty thrones in the pantheon. Bane was dead. Myrkul was dead. Baal was dead. Mystra was dead. The balance must be maintained, Au declared. The portfolios cannot remain empty. The duties must be performed. He looked at Midnight. You carry the fire of Mystra, Au said. You have protected the weave when the goddess herself failed. You are magic. Midnight tried to refuse. She wanted to grieve. She wanted to go home. But you do not say no to the Overgod. The mantle of divinity descended upon her. Her mortality was burned away. She ceased to be the woman named Midnight. She became the new Mystra. She became the mother of all magic. She ascended to the stars, taking the burden of the weave onto her shoulders. Then Au looked at Sirik. He saw the blood on Sirik's hands. He saw the madness in Sirik's eyes. He saw the ambition that burned brighter than any star. You have killed, Au said. You have betrayed. You have sown strife. You are a vessel of the very forces that sought to overthrow me." Sirik held his breath. He expected to be destroyed. Therefore, Au continued, "You are suitable." It was the ultimate irony. Au did not punish Sirik for his evil. He rewarded him because he was the perfect fit for the empty jobs. "Bane is gone," Au said. "You shall be tyranny. Baal is gone. You shall be murder. Myrkul is gone. You shall be the lord of the dead." A dark light engulfed Sirik. It was a violet, sickly energy. It rushed into him, filling the hollow spaces of his soul with the power of 3 dead gods. The rush was intoxicating. He felt the minds of every murderer, every tyrant, and every necromancer in the world suddenly connect to him. He heard their prayers. He felt their fear. He was no longer Sirik the thief. He was Sirik, the Prince of Lies. He was the Black Sun. He had won. The Avatar crisis ended in that moment. The barriers to the outer planes were dissolved. The gods who had survived were allowed to return to their homes. Magic stabilized. The prayers of the faithful were answered once more. But the world they returned to was different. Au issued a new decree. From this day forward, the power of a god would be directly tied to the number and fervor of their worshippers. If a god was forgotten, they would fade. If a god was ignored, they would die. This forced the deities to become active. They could no longer sit in their heavens and ignore the mortals. They had to curate their flocks. This changed the religious landscape of Faerun forever. It made the bond between priest and god a transactional necessity. But let us return to the ground. Let us return to the legacy of the dead. What happened to Bane, Myrkul, and Baal? They were dead, yes. But in Dungeons and Dragons, death is rarely the end for beings of that magnitude. They had contingencies. Myrkul, as we discussed, had transferred his intelligence into the shards of the crown of horns. The dust of his avatar drifted over Waterdeep. This dust carried a magical disease. It came to be known as the Myrkul's touch. Those who breathed it deep into their lungs would slowly rot from the inside. They would lose their vitality, but more than the plague, Myrkul survived as a whisper. The crown of horns was lost, buried in the rubble, eventually found by scavengers. It passed from hand to hand, corrupting everyone who touched it. Myrkul guided them. He taught them forbidden magic. He kept his name alive in the dark corners of libraries and crypts. He played the long game. He knew that as long as people feared death, he would have a foothold. Bane's legacy was more militant. His church did not collapse. It fractured. One faction worshipped the memory of Bane. Another faction turned to Sirik, who now held the portfolio. A third faction worshipped a new entity named Ayaktu Zivim. Zivim was the demigod son of Bane. He was a creature of hatred and fear. He claimed to be the heir, but in truth, he was a cocoon. Bane had hidden his true essence inside his own son. He was incubating. He was waiting for the right moment to burst forth and reclaim his throne. And Baal, the Lord of Murder, had foreseen his death at Boresker Bridge. He had copulated with mortals of every race. He had created the ballspawn. These were children carrying a spark of his divine essence. You may know this story well, for it is the saga of the Baldur's Gate. Bal intended for his children to kill each other, gathering the essence until the last survivor could become the vessel for his resurrection. So, while Cyric sat on the throne of bone in the castle of the Supreme, laughing at his victory, the dead three were already clawing their way back from oblivion. The era of Cyric was a disaster. He was insane. He was not a competent ruler of the dead. He did not judge souls fairly. He judged them based on his whims. This caused chaos in the afterlife. Eventually, the soul of Kelemver would be freed. He would lead a revolt in the city of the dead. He would overthrow Cyric's control over the afterlife and become the new, fair judge of the damned. This stripped Cyric of the death portfolio, weakening him. Then, Bane would return. Bursting out of Exvim, he would reclaim the portfolio of tyranny. Then, Bal would return, the survivor of the ballspawn crisis, eventually yielding the power back to the Father. And finally, Myrkul. The Lord of Bones is patient. In the current era, the era of upheaval and the second sundering, Myrkul has returned. He is no longer a greater deity. He is a quasi-deity, a servant of the reborn Bane. But he is here. He walks the realms again. The dead three are back together. They are diminished, yes. They are mortal-like, yes. But they are here. This brings us to the end of our story. We started with the hubris of three gods who wanted to steal the tablets of law. We saw them cast down. We saw them walk the earth. We saw them die violent, spectacular deaths. Bane died in a flash of light in the harbor of Tantras, destroyed by the sacrifice of duty. Myrkul died on the peak of Mount Waterdeep, disintegrated by the desperate courage of a mortal wizard. But their deaths were not endings. They were transformation. They changed the world. They created the wall of the faithless. They created the wild magic zones. They elevated mortals to godhood and dragged gods down to the mud. The time of troubles teaches us one fundamental lesson about the lore of the Forgotten Realms. Power is cyclical. Nothing is destroyed forever. The energy just changes hands. The villain of one age becomes the cautionary tale of the next, and the monster in the closet eventually learns how to open the door. As you lie there, thinking about the story we have woven, remember the image of the dust falling on Waterdeep. Remember that we are all walking through the remnants of history. The very ground of Faerun is composed of the bones of gods and the dreams of heroes. The dead three are dead. Long live the dead three. Thank you for joining me on this long journey into the archives. It has been a pleasure to guide you through the death of gods. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the lore, if you found relaxation in the destruction of tyrants, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It helps the archives grow. It helps me bring more stories from the darkness into the light. Sleep well, traveler, and may your gods always be watching.